I just want to say thank you very much to the Lean Kanban organization for the generosity, the warmth that I've had from over just a few years, and I found that I've become very close to this community. This community is quite special in a number of respects. What I like about it is we're all seeking the same thing. We're trying to improve the way we do our work, but we're trying to improve the workplace. And we're trying to change the thinking in that workplace. And I think that's everybody's ambition. Sometimes we focus a lot on the methods and the tools, but really we're just trying to create a better place to work. And I think this community is sharing those ideas. And I think from last year when I saw the presentations coming up on the Lean Kanban, and again this year, I can see a lot of those ideas cross-fertilizing, and that is really wonderful to see. And that is very precious and unusual in today's world. And I would ask you as a community to keep doing that, but remember it is very precious to be able to be open and honest and share those ideas. So without further ado, I just want to share some of my ideas, my experience over a number of years of setting up large IT organizations, and within those organizations also doing some local transformation in changing the thinking and the behaviors mostly of managers, mid-managers and senior managers. The other thing that I will be talking about today is I had a good fortune to meet a guy called Dr. Gary Fisher, who was doing some research for the London School of Economics on what makes organizations tick, how do they think, and what are the sorts of thinking patterns that really lead to really great workplaces. And I owe a lot of this next presentation to a lot of that expertise. When he was doing his research, first at London School of Economics, then Aston Business School, and then later at Warwick University, some of the findings from the research, particularly on some of the transformations I had done and other people had done, were quite surprising and alarming, and I had to change a lot of my views. Okay? So I'm going to talk about some of the things that I had a perspective on before, which turned out to be wrong. Some of the given wisdom is not true, but I want to support that with research. So I'm giving you an indication now of what I'm going to be talking about, really. It's about how do we create an environment in an organization where everybody is adaptive to the surroundings, they're learning, they're sharing, and it's an engaging organization. It means it's a great place to work, it's a great place to do business, and customers get on. Okay? And I think this is what we are trying to create. And I really want to give an insight in what creates an adaptive learning and inspiring organizations for people. I'm not throwing those words away lightly. Okay? I do mean that. Okay? And I will show you some of the things that the science has said and some of the things that the practice has found out. Because I'm basically a practitioner working within organizations, trying to change the thinking. Okay. This presentation will be available to all of you. I don't think there's any slides in here that I need to take out. I've been through them. I do have a blog on Lean Voices. You can email me. The details are there. I do have a SlideShare site. But the thing I would like to just really point out, I have been lucky enough to meet a lot of great people in my career, and I've learned something from everybody. And I acknowledge all of those people on my website, which can be found on leanvoices.com, which is all the sources, all the books that I've read, all the recommendations, all the research that I put into Sense and Respond. So all the attribution is there. As I said, let's get back to this chap. I met this chap round about 2000, and he was doing some studies on how organizations tick, what makes them adaptive in the marketplace. And in order to get that information, to be able to advise government on what sort of training they need to be bringing forward, what sort of management development they need to be putting in place to make organizations more prosperous. And funny enough, he did find a certain type of what I call a psychological profile that does lead to longer-term profitability. And I want to bring that research to you now, but that's the guy whose research I will be talking about. Before I go into the research itself, I just want to bring up this notion of reciprocity, which just means you scratch my back and I scratch yours. That's what it's normally thought of. But actually, it's more than that, okay? If I think you're scratching my back because you want something back, then I might react differently, okay? So reciprocity means I'm doing something for you, you do something for me, only works when there's a genuine feeling and it's actually sincere, okay? If I feel you're doing something to manipulate me, it doesn't have that effect. And this is something a lot of the marketeers, when they're selling products, absolutely get wrong. They say, if you get this insurance, we'll give you a pen. Because they've got the wrong end of reciprocity. If I've given you the gift, you feel obliged to return something. That's where that comes from. But it doesn't work if the person receiving the gift knows it's a manipulation tool. Okay? Now think about that in the workplace. Okay? Managers saying you're the best, we're the best, and doing all of these things and helping you out. You know as an employee or a young manager whether this is sincere or not. Okay? So actually the reciprocity here, if it even is doing good things for you, if you think it's because it's a manipulation, the reciprocity isn't necessarily positive. Reciprocity can be negative. Okay? So what Gary was able to do is to look at this reciprocity model in organizations and how people really feel about each other. How do they get involved? How do we get commitment? How do we get involvement? How do we get collaboration? So all of this effect comes from the science of social exchange. And that's what Gary was an expert in. Okay? Now, social exchange works in the workplace. It also works in economies. So it's well proven over 30 years of information. So his results are quite interesting. I will start right up front. Everybody talks about this respect for people as being really, really important, and it is, but people find difficulty in defining what respect for people means. I gave a lecture a number of years ago, and somebody kindly just took these and a couple of other sayings out of that, and I took the ones that resonated most with me. Respect for people as a manager in an agile, Kanban, lean environment, or any environment particularly where there's knowledge work, okay? It's about giving the people much more choice, autonomy. We know all these words, okay? I'm going into detail on what that really looks like. But in terms of respect for people, it's about managers helping employees freely choose how they solve the problem, freely choose what method they want to try, instead of saying, this is what I want you to implement, and I'm checking how good you are at doing it. Okay? Also, respect for people means understanding that all people have the ability to learn, and they have the right to be given opportunities to learn. But very often, people don't have an opportunity to learn because they say things, we don't even have time for improvement around here. I find that rather odd when people say, well, these are great things you talk about, we could improve things with these methods, but we just don't have time to do that. We have no time for improvement. And I say, anybody who says to me, we have no time for improvement, that's the biggest business case to make time for improvement. Because if you're not improving things, it's definitely not getting better, and it may in fact be getting worse. So the fact that you have not put any time in for improvement results in you not having time for improvement. So it's always the biggest business case. I think my favorite up here, and this really goes to the heart of what lean and adaptive leadership is about, there is a world of difference between helping people to see their way through things without telling them, and going up and saying, look, you don't do it this way, this is what you want to do. There's a world of difference between helping people to see and telling them they're blind. Okay, the second one is easy to do. Stop doing that, this is what you need to do. All right? Helping people to see, learning to see takes patience. It takes respect. You need to build that up over time. And we will go into some of those examples as I go through. This was a slide I put together a number of years ago when I was trying to explain to some of my colleagues in a business that we were setting up what we were trying to do for the workforce. And I came up with, I can't remember where this came from. So if anybody can tell me, I have modified it considerably. If somebody can tell me where this actually came from, I'd be appreciated. But is it lost in the mists of time? Performance is a matter of employees having choice, which is a matter of freedom with the power to do what matters for the customer. But usually something happens. The organization itself gets in the way of giving people choice, freedom, and the power to do. The role design, the processes, procedures, and methods lock them down. The performance measures drive them in the wrong direction. Okay? And the type of leadership may be euphemistically direct and control, or even worse, command and control. Okay? So those are the things that we put in the way of our employees being able to contribute. Now, the good thing is, this is a matter of design. These are man-made constructs. And if we know what the people principles really are, we can design around people principles, and we can get the best out of people, which you absolutely need in a knowledge business. We are not making hundreds of the same widgets. Okay? Software is crystallized thought. And when you look at beautiful software, you know it's beautiful. Okay? There's no refactoring needed. But to do that, it needs the craft, the space, and the experimentation. So what this leads to is what we call a fear and blame climate. Staying out. I hope he doesn't pick on me because I'll be exposed, because there's no trust in this environment. Okay. Many years ago, people used to ask me, Stephen, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a lean architect. I design organizations based on lean, and then I go into organizations to help them perform better by using some people lean principles to change that thinking. Working on the thinking is the most important thing to do. And in fact, I don't start on the transformation of the other things until the thinking is shifted. If I met somebody on aircraft, and he might be a very big manager in a big organization, he asked me what I do, I come up with, I do lean, there's this company called Toyota, blah, 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 at which time he's put in the local entertainment on, or he's gone to sleep. Now, I don't need to do that. If there's a guy sitting next to me, all right, I want to change the climate at work. So when he asked me, what do you do, Stephen? I said, I change climates. Organizational climates, that is. I change organizational climates such that they deliver long-term profitability. And he goes, oh, that's interesting. It's a much better conversation. Most senior managers and other people are not interested in this method or that method. Okay? They are interested in that long-term profitability, and they get this concept of the work climate does have a big impact on it. And if you notice, I'm talking about work climate, not culture. There is a difference. Culture is slow-moving, conservative, takes a long time to build. But climate changes very quickly, as we will see. So the work climate is the combined perceptions of the customers even. Sometimes they're internal, sometimes the perceptions of the customer, the employees, the managers, and the leaders. How they collectively think creates the climate. And the good news is the academic guys have been measuring this for years. Okay? And that's the information I want to bring here. Very often we are in these sorts of conferences, we are saying, yes, we've tried this, but then we've got to change the culture, or we've got to get them thinking right. Okay? I think it's much more productive to call about that as the work climate, because we can measure that and learn from it. And we can track it. Okay, so what is a climate? Well, these are the sorts of words that people would use to describe the climate. I know it's either it's trusting, challenging, freedom decision-making. I, as a staff member, influences a choice of managing practices in terms of the methods that we choose. We can influence the performance measures and management. Okay? We share information about what's happening on the outside the world with senior top managers. We share it across our function. We share information with the team, and we share it with the customer. Okay? We have influence on the end-to-end processes, management practices, or even other functions. And do our employees actually influence the products and services themselves? Okay? So these are some of the things that we'll be looking at. And there are 16 questions about climate. And what I would like you to do at the end of today, when you're going back to work maybe next week, is take a look at these 16 questions and ask what is it that you are doing in your organization to improve those aspects of the climate. I'm not telling you to improve every part of the climate. These are the critical parts that lead to adaptive learning, collaboration, and involvement. And that is really what we're trying to get. And if you look at the method of Kanban, it really plays into that part. But the evidence from the research supports it going in the right place. So it's not surprising why people are gravitating to that. They know it works. That climate can change. How quickly can it change? You get a new CTO. The old Dave is gone, he was great. Now we got this new guy. He's looking at the bottom line. He's looking at improving efficiency. That climate can change overnight. Has the culture of the organization changed? No. The employees still have a similar culture. The organization does, but it's frozen over for that time. Okay? That's how quick climate can change. So that's good news. All right? The bad news is the climate is quick to change. All right, so once we change it into the right space, we then have to maintain that. We have to guard that. Exactly the same message I said to you at the beginning of this conference. You have something special as a community. You do have this engaging, collaborating, adapting way between a lot of you. It doesn't have to be all of you, but you need to maintain that. Do not lose it. But you can have a climate that's very positive. And I really want to look at what the science tells us about these aspects. We need to sort this into something that we can understand and we can communicate in the workplace. So in order to do that, I've been working with Gary for about 10 years on this now, trying to come up with a way of explaining what climate looks like in a very straightforward way. Because actually all this stuff is quite complicated. The directions of causality are quite difficult to understand sometimes. But there are some very basic principles that we can grab hold of. And we came up with this thing. The metaphor is engaging, learning, leading, and improving. Now, don't be fooled by the simplicity of those. But that is the journey I just want to take you through on a couple of slides. Engaging, how the organization engages with its staff in about daily matters, how it engages with customers to deeply understand what they want. Okay? More importantly, deeply understanding what they need and why they need it. That is the most important thing. All right? Often what they want is not what they need. So how do we have methods, processes, systems, job roles that allow us to deeply understand that? And once we've brought that in, can we learn from it within our department, within our function, and use that information right across the end-to-end business, not just within my function? So it's learning and sharing that information and sharing it with senior managers as well. So we have that common view. And that's what we mean by learning. Everybody end-to-end is learning. And then leading. And leading in an agile organization or an adaptive organization is different to a manufacturing organization that's producing widgets. Okay? When we're dealing with knowledge, we need a much more distributed form of leadership. It's not about the guys at the top telling what to do right down the chain of command anymore. Okay? We get more autonomy when we distribute that leadership, but it has to be a conscious decision, and it has to be letting go of certain types of control by senior management. But they won't do that unless there is trust. And I'll talk about how do we establish trust a little bit later on. And then improving. These are the methods that we use. It could be Lean, Kanban, it could be systems thinking, Agile, Scrum. There are hundreds of them. The thing is, methods come and go. But the principles of leading, engaging, and getting the willing contribution of people is timeless. And we mustn't forget that. So let's work on those things. Most companies try to sell into this space. It's easier to sell tools and processes and bits of technology. But unless we close this loop with these other things, very often we use the technology to make waste go faster. And then somebody quoted me yesterday, which was very nice on this slide. We end up with cheaper, neater, faster waste. We don't end up with any change. So we're putting this together. So I really want to lead you into the science very gently now and talk about this engaging. I'm giving you just some examples. So does the job design allow your staff to engage with customers and users? I have seen so many organizations where the job of certain people is you must not talk to customers. That is somebody else's job. Okay? So how can they become customer responsive and know what they mean? So there's a barrier already. Okay? Because there's a particular theory of management going on that does that. Can staff modify the solutions without getting permission? Or it's always got to be signed off, got to, you know, it's really tightly. This says it all. Is everything forbidden unless it's permitted? You don't do anything unless you come and ask me. Nothing. As opposed to an adaptive organization where everything is permitted. You can do anything you like. But over here, with the SOX compliance, we've got to be, that's not permitted. Can you see there's a completely different atmosphere in work if you have a management attitude like this? Is this making sense? Is this making sense? Learning. All right, do staff routinely share business intelligence? That's information about what's going on in the outside world with their customers and their users. Not just about the particular product or service you're dealing with, but is that product and service working in their world? What is their world anyway? What do they achieve? What are those goals? That's what we mean by understanding customers and sharing that with senior management. What is the management focus day to day? Is it on employee utilizations, bigger bang for the buck, cost reduction, work intensification, or is it, as it should be in knowledge work, creativity, customer outcomes, problem solving, learning, sharing knowledge, collaboration? These are all a matter of design. But first, there needs to be a choice. And even when you make the choice, there needs to be trust from people that when a senior manager says he's going down here, the people need to have some trust. Because up until now, there may have been no trust. So establishing that trust is really the key to start this journey. Improving. Do employees influence the end-to-end business process or just their workspace? What do they have about changing the measurement system? Or I always just have to take what you think is right. All right? We should be measuring outcomes as targets, maybe, but we should be measuring the means, how we produce the work. All right? We should never have measurements of the means as goals, because that screws up the means. Leading. Do leaders foster this no-blame climate to surface problems for teams to work on? The worst statement is, from management, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. That is absolutely crazy. That is old world management. That is not empowerment. That is abandonment. There is no learning. People will not step up to the mark, and all the problems will stay underground, and you will not improve. So you can see how this climate has a huge influence on how we perform. Do leaders pay more attention to efficiency-driven targets or end-to-end effectiveness, the means of production? And customer outcomes. What's our ability to produce? I don't need to produce it to know what my ability is. Okay? I don't need to try to produce 1,000 and then only produce 800 and say, oh, I don't have the capability. No, we should know what our capability is beforehand. These are the questions. Okay? I won't go into all of them today, but take them away, and what I would like you to do is, when you get a chance, look at this presentation again, and take your time and learn from some of these, and just look at what your climate is like. And I'm going to give you a scheme in a moment to start plotting a climate for yourself. But these are the questions. Freedom and decision-making. What levels of freedom and decision-making does the job role have? And I'm talking about the people who create the value, okay? The people who run the IT in this case, at this conference, and the people who generate code, the testers, what levels of freedom and decision-making do they have? How do we face the customer? Is it just one person from our group, or is everybody involved in that? Does everybody really understand our customer? Or are we just relying on that one single point of failure called a product owner and hope he gets it right? And by the way, the product owner never turns up at all the meetings anyway, so we just make it up. Okay. Sharing intelligence with the team. I have found this out. Sharing with the team, that's usually good. We probably have that. But do we share it across the function? I have across all my teams. And do I share it with functions outside of my functions, going down the value stream? Okay? And do I share this information with top or senior management? How often does senior management come down and look at the means of production? And this is what I love about the Kanban boards, because the Kanban boards is showing you your means of production as well as the work going through that means. And you can make choices on how to improve the work and the means without worrying about the output. If I improve the means, I can get the output. And if I improve the means beyond what is needed for the current product, I can offer new types of services or new types of products. It gives me a chance to be much more adaptive to changing circumstances. Okay, performance management. If your performance management system is driving people to hit the right number of lines of code or the right number of sales output measures, we will do that, and very often we will break the means of production to try and do it. Adaptive leadership, that's distributed, I've talked about that. What does the organization think about responding to customers' issues? Do we really take them seriously? Or are we focused on making some other numbers and then we'll think about the customer later? Do we implement ideas to better serve customers, or do we just produce what we do and nothing else? And then our influence on various parts of the organization. So I want you to keep those things in mind. There's lots of things to keep in mind. But when you get back to your office, you can take your time, go around observing, how do we do these things? And there are 4 archetypes which I want to show you. 4 typical ways we do this. And most organizations fit into this scheme. For today, what I'm going to do, oh, that's nice. Christmas is online. What I'm going to do is just show you 2 of those schemes. I'm going to show you the top one, called the mass adaptation, so we can adapt at scale. All right, this is what I call a customer value enterprise. Everything is subject to delivering things for the customers. We can provide personal advice to suit the individual. Employee skills are high. They will integrate and combine all solutions on the customer's behalf in unique combinations, as opposed to what is the mass production. It's one size fits all, variety, very low variety of offerings. Employee skills are basic. So we can see those 2 models. There are 2 other models in between, which for time I'm leaving out, but you can look at those in your own time. So they're there. I'll just say what they are. They're mass customization, characterized by a pizza. It's the same as, you know, the bus is a batch and queue system. Pizza, you've got some options. The mass specialization, you've got lots of specialist group. It's a bit like going into a department store. You want some outfits for a wedding or something or other, and you have to go to different departments to get the accessories, okay? But in those areas, boy, do they know about those items. But you, as the customer, are doing the integration, as opposed to the mass adaptation at the top, which is we are doing the integration, we are doing the design, all of those things. And that is what adaptive organizations can do, and that is what knowledge workers can do, as long as you cultivate the knowledge. So these are the landscapes. I tested this in the hall earlier on. It's too small to see up the back. Okay, so I'm going to move off this slide and show a blown up version of it. This is the scheme. Before I got off it, there's the character. These types of organizations provide different offerings to customers. The customer experience is different. The employee expertise is different. Who improves things in the organization is very different. The management focus is very different. You know, employee utilization, cost reduction, work intensification, whereas management focuses on creativity, expertise, new products and services. The leadership focus, which is what I want to talk about, as opposed to command and control or direct and control, we have listen and adapt. Our senior managers are listening and adapt by nature. They're evidence-driven, not opinion-driven. We are getting consultation with everybody. Do we know all the things that we need to know? And Liz Keogh's presentation yesterday was talking about those very things. How do we know what we don't know? And how do we manage those sorts of risks? Well, in a listen and an adapt organization, you have a bigger chance. So I'm going to take those 2 down and make it visible to the people at the back. So I've just taken the adaptive and the mass production. Employee expertise is basic here. Here is expert broad knowledge, integrating solutions. It's the frontline experimenting and learning. Here it's about improvement boards, suggestion schemes, other people, centralized guys working out what we should improve, not the people in the operation that actually know the customer and know what they need to do. It's a separate group. The management focus we've talked about. The competitive basis, why we are going to market with these models. This is good if it's a commoditized market, it's not changing very much, I can sell all of those. But I'm going after high volumes. It's usually large models, low margins, and we're going for economies of scale. Here we've become a trusted advisor to the customer, we're looking at integrations of lots of services, and we're focused on business outcomes. So you're now starting to see these are different climates at work. Before I move off this, the main difference here is there's disciplined experimentation, and here is disciplined compliance. This has a busy slide warning, and this is some of the last of the busy slides. I'm going to walk you through this. I've told you that engaging, learning, leading, and improving is really important. I've also given you the 16 questions, and I've given you the 4 types of organization. Now, don't get alarmed with this because it's trying to cover a whole set of industries. You'll know which one you are in here. But let's have a look at this. This the climate strength, how strongly the people feel this. This is what this, their perceptions. So these 4 questions, A, B, C, and D. The first one is freedom and decision making. Now, this is a real company, okay? This is an applications company before ICT. This is about 2,000 people, all right? They didn't have freedom and decision making here, and what little they had was usually in the line manager, definitely not the staff. B, up here, is customer-facing activity. They didn't do the customer-facing activity, somebody else did it for them. C and D is, do I know things about the customer? And actually in this organization, unusually, they did know what was going on there. Were they sharing that intelligence with the team? So yes, it's good, but it could be better. So the way that we engage our customers and bring that information in, engaging. So how do we learn? Well, look, this is showing quite a strong mass production approach to learning, all right? So the organizational understanding was quite high. They knew where everything was. Yes, it was still in silos, but they knew where everything was. F, okay, sharing intelligence across the function, great. G, sharing intelligence with other functions and sharing it with top management. So we had this information coming in. So this seems really cool, all right? It could be better to engage in the front end, but I think this was like this because of product owners, okay? So the leading bit, this is where it fell down completely. We didn't even have a good mass production form of leading, okay? Performance management was actually focusing on just hitting the numbers, no outcome measures at all. J, we're looking at adaptive leadership. It was leadership from the top. It was direct and control. K, the adaptive leadership, there was very little distributed leadership. Sorry, I'm mixing these up. And responding to customer issues. They were disconnected as a management team and an operation from addressing the customer's issues. They were internally focused on maximizing the assets and hitting the utilization targets and the SLAs. As long as I hit the SLAs, the customer must be happy. And we found that all the SLAs were green, but the customer was not happy because we were looking at the wrong things. Improving. Actually, they didn't have the means of improving, okay? They had very little influence on changing the products, even when they knew they needed a change. They never had any influence on methods to improve their work. So this was a very stale climate. You get a sense of what it must be like to work here. Okay. This is about 18 months later. Now, things had improved because the transformation objective was to get from here to here. And in some cases, they'd improved. Okay? They are moving into being much more flexible, but they still had some way to go. But the biggest change was here on the leading, J. All right? The adaptive leadership, they'd started to distribute that and get some trust in there. But this one, I, okay, performance management. Performance management was the hardest thing that this company had to change. But at least they now knew the performance management system was driving in the wrong direction. So what was stopping the change in performance management? Well, we'd agreed what the bonuses were going to be for next year and what the targets were. And we have to go through a whole year's cycle at least before we even get to changing those. So even though they knew they were the bad measures, even though they knew they were bonusing people on them, they were stuck with them until the next cycle. This is an interesting one, and I chose this one because it's probably more resonant with you guys. This is a large applications development organization, and these are climates from 2 teams. You can take a climate right across the business or by teams. You never go below teams. Okay, one team, we had this profile. Okay, so the improvement was all locked down. All right. They weren't leading, it was a top-down leadership. Learning, they were doing some, and they were getting some engagement with customers. But actually, it was a mass production setup. Another part of the organization, the climate looked like this. Now, the interesting thing is, both were using Agile, both were using Scrum. Same methods. But one team was much more effective. And you can see from this one which one it was, because the other ones were learning and adaptive and improving on the methods that they were using. This goes further into asking some questions about this DevOps problem, which we'll get to in a moment. Okay. This is the run part of the organization. This is the IT bit. You can see this was very mass production, and actually this one was a poor mass production at that. Okay. So everything's locked down. This company had all the ITIL qualifications you could imagine, which meant it was locked down. Because they'd misinterpreted what ITIL was, this is not a framework, this is the law. Okay. So 18 months later, they were up here. Now, I just want to make this observation. I don't normally talk about this because you are a specialized crowd. If we go back to this slide, these are the guys that are making code, come up with applications, and then need to take it into that environment. Okay? Their work climate, they're struggling to do that. All right? Okay. Now, this is the IT department. If they're doing that the same, with that climate, they probably will understand. But they're still getting that they've overcome the functionalization. But the climates are similar. Okay? So what happens when this front end, and this is happening all over the place, particularly with the adoption of Agile and Kanban, we are moving from here to this, but then we are faced with that. This is the DevOps problem. And what people are trying to do is they're trying to solve a climate problem with technology. Okay? So the thinking either side of that divide is completely opposite. And we can measure that. In an adaptive organization, we have the right to change our mind. And that is a strength, not a weakness, but in the light of evidence. So let's talk about this. Let's put this into some practice and see what that looks like. What I'd like to do is I'd like 4 people to come up here on the stage, and I need you to do it quickly. 4 people, hands up. It's not a ritual humiliation time. All right, so 4 people up here. And I'd like 4 people to stand up from the audience and go right to the back, right to the back. And if I could have the lights down at this point, that might be useful too. Just have the lights down. Okay, I'd like you to go. Can we have another one to join you? Yes, yeah, you could go. You got it, right at the back. Right, now what I would like you to do, I know we got 3. We got 4, fine, come here. All right, what I'm going to show you is a photograph. For those of you who have seen this, please do not say anything. Don't even giggle, don't say anything, okay? Just go with this. You're going to see a photograph, and what I want you to do, without shouting out in your group, I would just like you to confer. Don't let the other people know. We are just going to confer. I want you to identify the name, the picture of this very famous person. Agree, and don't say anything until I ask you. So, if you just move to the side and get just two there, all right? The rest of you, you can just figure out what you're seeing, okay? But don't talk to each other. All right, so I'm going to put this up for a couple of seconds. You can face the screen. So who is this famous person? Do not say anything. Can you see it? Go closer. Get closer. This is where I do my Jerry Springer bit. So who do you see? So who do you see? Right, those of you at the back, who do you see? Marilyn Monroe. Who do you see? Einstein. Einstein.
I'm married, I'll take Einstein.
Now, what this is a test of is sexual preference. No, I'm not, I'm joking. I am joking. I am joking. Okay, so up there is Marilyn Monroe, and here is Einstein. I'd like these groups to just change places really quickly. And you in there, you can now start having a conversation about who you see, where you're sitting. Talk to your colleagues. Who do you see? Come on, come up on the stage really quickly. Let me ask you at the back. Who do you see? Marilyn Monroe. Who do you see? Albert Einstein. Okay, great. Go down. Sit down. Big round of applause for the guys, please. Thank you. I use this as a metaphor. And how on earth can you get trust in an organization when the guys at the top thinks the organization looks beautiful and is wonderful like Marilyn Monroe? Yet the guys at the front end said, well, look, we've got old processes, the technology doesn't work, and we don't have the right skills. Okay? This is a problem of trust. You can use this metaphor in a couple of ways. I use it for trust. I look at, there's a perspective at the top which is not the same as the front. From a lean perspective, this is going to Gemba. The guys at the back need to come here. When we have that common view, we can get common goals. We can get collaboration around those goals. We can get involvement because we're all singing from the same Einstein hymn sheet. But what about the guys in the middle? What did you see? Anybody volunteer? Marilyn Monroe, some bits and pieces. Usually in the middle, depends on how the proportion of the whole works. It's a bit blurred. Sometimes I see Marilyn Monroe, sometimes I see Einstein. This is the middle managers. They know what the guys at the top are looking for, but it looks, well, it's sort of like that, so I'll clean it up and make it look like Marilyn Monroe. And then when I'm talking to the front guys, they'll say, yes, I know it's not as good, but, you know, if it was me, I wouldn't be doing this, so would you please help, you know? So we've got to get that common view. Now, that is for hierarchy. It also works across the value stream. It works horizontally, not just vertically. If the people at the front end think it looks like Marilyn Monroe and the guys delivering at the back end thinks it looks like Einstein, we have a problem that way too. So it's end-to-end and top-down. We need to have that common view. And we need methods and processes to get that common view. It's like putting the lights on at a fantastic party and seeing all the mess. Then somebody shouts from the back of the hall, turn the lights off, we were enjoying ourselves. We've got to put the lights on and keep them on and see the mess. I will quickly go past this in the interest of time. That's common purpose. That will be in the handout. I'm going to talk about this common purpose. This is a government IT organization for a very large city in the UK. Their problem was they'd had attrition of staff. Sorry, not attrition. 20% of the staff had been cut because of cuts. The IT guys were blaming the application guys, the test guys were blaming the developers. It didn't work. It was highly functionalized, and I can show you the climate a little bit later. But when we got these people together, it was quite clear they did not trust anybody, up, down, left, or right. Okay? These guys were really beaten up. So the first thing we had to do was to say, well, what's the purpose of our transformation work? To bring people together. And they came up with a purpose, and it wasn't 5 minutes. It was nearly a day and a half, but they crafted this, and this was a cross-functional, cross-hierarchical team. Our purpose is to enrich, support, and protect the lives of the citizens of this great city. These are the IT guys and the application guys. We do this by creating a department that encourages opportunity, because we don't have it today. It encourages learning and growth in a safe environment, because it is not safe, where established ideas can be challenged, and which engages, recognizes, and supports the willing contribution of staff. You don't need to incentivize us if you're doing it right. To do this, we must be honest, committed, and inspiring. That honesty was a big word, because that was missing, and trust was missing. Everybody wanted that, but the climate was toxic. How are we going to change it? They did some analysis, some traditional value stream analysis, looking at end-to-end work, how long it took, the waiting times, all the usual stuff we know and love, and many, many methods that allow us to do that. But even finding that out doesn't mean we'll change. All right? All it gives us is data about how bad we're doing. What we measure is really important. Again, this is in the Sense and Respond book. What we're measuring on a day-to-day business need to matter to the customer. What was their outcome? Business outcomes is the purpose. And does the measure that I'm using impact the outcomes for customers? No or yes? And is the measure that I'm using for my piece of work just functional, means I only use it here, or even in my team? Or is the same measure across everybody, end to end? So which quadrant do you think we should be having common measures in that give us collaboration? Because when we have diverse measures, we end up with silo thinking, and we do not collaborate. We get our local goals. So I'm going to help you out. What we want are measures that are end-to-end, across everybody, and actually meet the customer outcomes. I am going to put up, for illustration, it's a direct lift from the ITSM book, for recommendations for measurement in the IT space. You can go and have a look on your measurement charts for development, and I'm glad to say development guys do not have as many measures as the run guys. This is the run guys. Most of them do not matter to the customer, and they're functional. Most of them are averages. They're not even the range, the probability of them. Okay? And everybody knows just measuring the averages covers up a lot of things. Measuring averages, if you measure averages, you'll end up running an average business. It's like saying, I got 1 foot in molten lava, another one in liquid nitrogen, and on average, I should feel comfortable. It is those extremes of unknowing to our customer and ourselves for scheduling and planning. It is the range that kills. We all know that. So we took this. This is IT and application support. This is, again, it's a government body. First day, we asked them to measure all of their measures. This is what they came up with. And guess what? All of these were green, not just green Post-its. The measure was green. And they turned to me and said, Stephen, why are you here? Look, all our measures matter to the customer, and they're end-to-end. And guess what? They're all green. I said, great, it's fine. So we spent a week talking to customers, understanding how departments worked, how they collaborated or didn't collaborate. A week later, we came back, and this had happened. Not just their handwriting had improved, but their mindset had changed. It had changed from thinking everything was fine. These were all internal, down to here. These were green, but they didn't matter to the customer. Now, if you want to change this team, you want to introduce Kanban, Agile, Scrum, and people think they're doing okay, guess what? that take-up of that new approach is not solving anything for them. They think they're okay. But when you've shifted the mindset from that to that, you now open the door to transformation of the work climate and the way we work together and we collaborate. So the measurement system is absolutely key. Surface the problem. This goes further. These are the typical things that developers ask for, or the design guys coming up with the application spec. They come up with, what are your pain points? So we mapped the pain points into here. These are the client's pain points. Most of the pain points were internal to that client and had nothing to do with their business. And when we mapped their measures over that, it was internal pain for internal measures. It gets worse. These were the IT and application support guys I just talked about. They were those measures. They put some more on when they come to do this, because they got the exercise by now. They then went to the end user, and this is in the council, so these are all the council workers using all the technology for revenues and benefits, parking applications, permits, all sorts of things, all right, planning, applications, a whole range of things. When asking the end user what their pain points were, they were all internal, okay? And when we asked, well, what are the citizens? What are you measuring against the citizen outcomes? Citizens' outcomes were all actually internal ones. So the specification for the technology was being specified for an internal requirement because there was internal measurement and it was an internal climate. So therefore, the technology had no chance of delivering on the ROI, which the government wanted here, which was a transformed city for citizens. We were just transforming the way we processed work internally. Leadership is an activity, not a position. And in the lean, Kanban, agile world, that is a prerequisite. It involves everybody. Okay? And we can all learn it, as we'll talk about. This is a guy who has said he's fed up with the split between all these projects, and he came up with a redesign of how we were going to work together. And he's delivering it to management. It took him 4 hours to come up with this, because he knew what the purpose was, he knew what the measures were, and we knew what type of work we needed. And he was saying to the manager, give us this and we will do it. So, in fact, there wasn't much reorganization of structure, but there was a reorganization of flows to work. This is what they came up with, that the IT teams and infrastructure control guys and the enterprise architecture guys were in at the design stage, by design, not later. So we don't get this throwing it over the wall. There can be no end-to-end transparency unless there's top-to-bottom trust. I said trust is an issue. I'm coming to the serious part. That same group of people did an exercise, and it's a modification of an exercise that I learned from a really great personal leadership development company called the Landmark Education. But this was about personal development, about understanding what's important and doing the right things to achieve that. I had their permission to use this in a corporate setting. And basically what it said is, what do we say about ourselves? What do we say about our customers? And there's a big list of things. And then we measured ourselves, saying, well, how much do we say that? 1 being not a lot, without conviction of it, and 10 being we say it a lot. We invest in our people, 8. We have the right tools, well, it could be better, 7. All of those. And then we ask another question, but what's it like really? What is the reality? And we measure it again. And then we have what I call the authenticity gap, or the pretense gap, whatever you want to call it, it's a gap. This is 1 to 10 for all these dimensions, and some of them are quite serious, that our reports are real. We are reporting the correct stuff. Our SLAs are genuine. They're all down there. This was the pretense, and that was the reality, and we had this gap. And that is what was causing most of the fear. And this is the guy, he's the enterprise architect, talking to the senior guys saying, We have to stop writing the reports the way we do because it's making us look better than we really are. So when we ask for help and resource to fix these problems, we can't go and ask because we're pretending it's okay. There was lots of other stuff, but you can understand how that is, okay? Yes, there is a pretense, there is a reality, and there is a cost individually. Loss of integrity, loss of involvement, I don't want to collaborate, I don't want to be part of this. I'll just make the numbers, don't ask me. Withdrawn, not engaged, you will not get collaboration in that climate. This is what the climate was like to start. This is what it was 18 months later. Higher levels of trust. And that purpose statement that you saw right at the beginning, I'll quickly go back. I should have had that again. This purpose statement, that came up by the team, and the management adopted that as the purpose for the department, and it's still there. And that's their guiding light. It's about challenging opportunity, and people are now challenging the accepted wisdom. But they had to do that. There was trust. You had to get the honesty. You had to put the lights on. This guy is telling, your baby is ugly. It doesn't look like Marilyn Monroe. It's a very tough conversation. Change resistance in organization is proportional to your lack of leadership. It is not the people who resist. It's our lack to be able to gain trust and inspire people and say, yes, it's bad, but we've got a way out. Okay? Heroic leadership on a day-to-day basis is not a sign of, it's a sign of leadership failure, not success. Why do we have to have leaders being heroic all the time? When in fact we can have distributed leaders where we don't need a world for heroics. If we need heroics, it tells you the type of climate we're in. Come to the last. We've changed that from red. We've got leadership without position at any level. We've got purpose and the possibility of creating. And we also in there, we work on using probabilities to work on things, not just absolute numbers. Willing contribution. People will give willing contribution. You do not need to incentivize. What I have found is most adaptive organizations, after a while, remove their incentive schemes and they just pay people properly. Because there's a big myth about pay for performance if that performance is against the wrong measures. Changing that climate, we have the blame-free climate. Performance is a matter of choice, which is a matter of freedom with the power to do what matters to our customers and achieving their purpose. And that's me, and there's a bibliography at the end. Thank you very much.